Inside the Birds is back. What's going on, everybody? Geoff, Mosher, and Adam Caplan. There's some excitement in my voice. It's because I know we're about to do something, Adam, that we get a lot of feedback on. We get a lot of people wanting us to do that, and that's when we get this deep into free agency and all the contracts are in. We like to go through who the Eagles brought in either through free agency or acquired via trade, really get into the root of their contracts and talk about what that means for both the team, the player, and the future. This is a very popular and by demand podcast that we do every year. So in this episode, we're going to start off looking at the players that the Eagles have acquired this offseason on offense. And again, that's free agents, but also trades. As Adam, we know the Eagles have been pretty involved here in the trade market.
Yeah, for sure. I enjoy doing this stuff. But unlike last year where the money was somewhat massive with extensions and obviously the Barkley deal was still big last year. Now it's even bigger with their little bit of restructuring and giving them more money. But yeah, it's always interesting. And then, every once in a while there's something that we completely forgot about. Like Nick Muse, I remember that they signed him, a former 7th rounder.
Oh, yeah.
Gave him some money. They gave him a little bit of, not a very small guarantee, but to give a guy who's a long shot to make the team a little bit of a guarantee, that tells you there's something there. That's what we're learning when we look at these contracts.
Mm-hmm.
Though a lot of them are small, and they're going to have to perform to make the roster. There is a reason why they give guys that you probably haven't heard of before a little bit of guaranteed money because they see something.
That's right. All right. So I also like doing this now, Adam, because we get so knee deep as we are now, less than a month away from the NFL draft. We get really knee deep into NFL draft coverage. So this is a little bit of a diversion again, because it's free agency. But all this week, and it started really about a week and a half ago, we have been pedal to the metal with NFL draft coverage. And I think we've added a layer this year. We're getting a lot of great feedback on because we're running the Intel with Greg Cosell, where Greg is giving us fantastic breakdowns. We've done interior defensive line. We've done edge. We've done linebacker. We're getting corner and safety going this week before we move to offense. But in conjunction with that, we've been running a very good series based on analytical breakdowns of these prospects with Sam Finkel, our analytics expert, who has done a great job with these scatter charts where it measures these prospects at their positions and it gives them a score based on their production in college and their athleticism score. And then he plots the chart, the mark on the chart, to show you where they fall and what quadrant they were. Obviously, you want to be upper right. That's where your athleticism is through the roof and your production is through the roof. But also, not just comparing them to this class, but he compares this class to past first rounders for the last 4 years and past top 100 for the last 4 years. So obviously, the scores and the averages move, and you start to see how certain prospects fall into categories. And we're running this concurrently, Adam, with Greg stuff. So it gives people like the tape breakdown, the analytics breakdown. And I think that's so important because we know how much teams really do value. It's not the be all to end all, but they place a lot of emphasis, including the Eagles, on athletic testing. And they love to get these later round guys who maybe don't have the production for whatever reason, but test really well. And you think you can make something from that.
So Rick Spielman, the former Vikings GM, who's now worked for the Jets. I remember Rick told us on our show a couple of years ago that Adam Thielen, that was an analytics signing. Believe it or not, he wasn't drafted.
That's right.
But based on their analytical data, there was something with the testing that they found. And that's crazy because you're talking about of his day. He's not going to be a Hall of Famer, but he's a really good football player. Who's he's signed for a lot of money with the Panthers a couple of years ago. He's still there. So the thing about analytical information is interesting. Everybody has their own benchmarks and what they find important. I'll give you an example before we move on. And the reason why I'm going to bring this guy up is because not only was he drafted, he was at a school not too far away in Princeton. Remember Seth DeValve? He was a receiver. I'm going to say he was drafted by the Browns in the 4th round. Without looking, it's probably somewhere around 2015 or 2016, something like that. He bounced around. He never really made it.
Yeah, that's one of the few names that really just doesn't register with me, but go ahead.
So what happened was his athletic testing was off the charts, but as someone who was on one of the teams he played, someone in personnel told me, the problem was he wasn't physical at all. Yeah, he could leap. His vertical was good. A lot of the athletic testing would show you he's got to be drafted because it's off the charts. But he was just not physical, and he got moved off the play. I think he got moved to tight end, which was he just didn't have the build for it. So what I learned by that one is that analytical testing could be great, but if the guy physically does not dominate or he can't go get the football, he's just not physical enough. He's not going to make it, and that's where you got to combine tape with data,
Right?
and they've got to meet the middle. The tape guys and the analytic guys have to meet in the middle. They've got to fight. This is why in a lot of buildings we don't talk about this much. But these guys sometimes don't get along. The analytic guys don't get along with the veteran old school guys. Although a lot of old school guys, you and I know, they'll use PFF. They like PFF for certain things.
Correct.
Anything that the eye cannot see, they want the information because they don't have time to start tracking it themselves. They'll use it and they decide what's junk and what's real.
Right.
But my only problem with these old school guys is if you're not going to look at the stuff, you're crazy because you're going to find stuff that you didn't know.
Sure.
That's the value of it.
Yeah. I mean, I think, how about a guy like Jalix Hunt, right? That's a guy who I think 10, 12 years ago, who knows if he's even found at Houston Christian, which was previously Houston Baptist, but athletic testing through the roof, and not just the testing, but his body length. He had grown 6 inches and he grew into a really well-sized defensive end who also tested through the roof. Now, you would put a 0 under production because who is he playing against, right? I mean, as long as it's great that he dominates his level of competition, but that's still far from SEC or Big Ten or I'm trying to think of a conference that's still alive anymore, ACC football, right? So it's a big difference. And maybe 10, 15 years ago, you would have had a lot of people saying, don't give me this testing BS. This guy hasn't done anything. But now you're right. There's a better marriage. We know with the Eagles that the marriage is better between the staffs there. And it looks like they got a really nice find there because they were able to project whether this testing was going to translate to the NFL level.
All right. Before we get started, a couple things. I'm glad you brought up James Hunt. I remember last year when I called you, I said, hey, there's this kid who I saw at the Senior Bowl from, you mentioned Houston Christian. No one's really talking about him because it's hard to find his tape. So I called Greg Cosell. I said, hey, listen, have you seen Jalix Hunt? He goes, you know what? He's not in our system. And I go, oh, really? I go, he goes, what are you hearing? I go, I think based on the people I spoke with, he's probably going to go in the 3rd round. He won't go in the 2nd because you can't justify that. You can't.
Right.
He just, there's not enough production. He's a late bloomer, but the athletic testing, like let's give you an example. You mentioned 6'3" and 3/4. At Cornell, he might have been 5'10", 5'10 and a half, 5'11". Okay. So he had a growth spurt around 19 years old. He grew to be 6'3" and 3/4, 252. Now you mentioned the arm length. Okay. A left tackle would love to have these arms, 34 3/8 arms, 82 3/4 wingspan. Okay. Hands, big hands at 10. The bench is fine at 19. He's not an offensive lineman. You're not worried about that. A good 40 at 4.64. The 10-yard split was 1.6, which is solid. His vert was really good at 37.5 inches. So you just mentioned it. That's going to get you drafted no later in the 5th round.
Mm-hmm.
But you talk to the kid. The coaches we spoke with. One in particular told me, I've told the story before, I'm sure, where this coach told me to petition his GM. Said we got to draft in the 3rd round. We have to do it before someone else gets him. We're going to regret this if we don't. And I called the guy late in the season, late last season, because he wasn't playing early because the Eagles didn't have plans for him to play. But as we know, Bryce Huff got hurt. He also more or less got benched, and BG got hurt, so he had to play, and he really played well.
Yep.
So this goes to show you, this is where sometimes you have to say, you know what? Damn the production or damn the competition. He looks the part. He's a good kid. He's smart. He's got the measurables are great. We can coach this guy. You got to give Jeremiah Washburn credit, their edge rushers coach.
Yeah.
It's the same guy when the Eagles set the team record in 22. This is, and obviously you got to give Howie Roseman credit, the GM and whoever has that area. This is a hell of a find, man. As we go forward, I'll be interested to see if he right now he also be competing for a starting job, but they haven't had the draft yet, so we have to see what happens.
Yeah, I feel like the explosive edge rusher is getting to be a lot like the quarterback, where even if they're not if you want one, you're going to have to draft him higher than you think because somebody else is really craving him as well. And that, to to keep furthering this point, Shamar Stewart from Texas A&M, Greg Cosell did a great breakdown about as explosive and bendy and shifty and athletic as you'll ever see in an edge rusher. And he probably will be, if he's not a first round pick, he's going to be a top 40, right? But Greg said he doesn't know how to rush the passer, but it doesn't matter because some team will figure, hey, we'll coach it into him. We'll get his hand usage going. We'll do what the Eagles did with Jalen Hunt. We'll try our best to coach it into him. But I mean, the athleticism is all there, and that's why he's going to be a top 40 pick. But if you were just basing it on technique and fundamentals and production and college things like that, you probably would say no. He's not ready. He's not that guy. But
by the way, because he's got to be willing. Like Stewart's got to be a willing learner. Like so that's why I'm bringing up Jalen Hunt here. By the way, also had a great broad jump of 10.8, which is in terms of edge rushers, that's way up there in percentile. So. The thing that we heard about Jalen Hunt was one of the cool things that we heard was he's really curious, wants to know. Because smart players are always going to ask questions. It's just the way it is. And he was a really willing learner. This coach told me, who gave him a 3rd round grade. And that if he makes it and becomes a starter, becomes a player, the Eagles are hopeful down the line that he could be by year 3, which may happen in year 2, by the way, depending on what happens in the draft and how he performs this season. It's the 1-2 that's the part you can't measure by tape always. So effort you could see,
right?
But it's the makeup. It's the wiring, as they say. You've heard that term, the wiring of the player.
Sure. Yeah.
About how much he wants it and to be a great player and be a great teammate. And this kid Jalen Hunt has got all of that, and that's why he's off to a really good start.
Absolutely. Great stuff. All right. So make sure you're checking out the Intel with Greg Cosell podcast. They'll be running, all week long next week as well. And the same thing with Sam Finkel's, our analyst. We need to come up with a name for that one, Adam. I got to loop you into that. Like maybe Inside the Numbers, I just keep saying edition of Inside the Birds with an analytics viewpoint, but we'll eventually come up with a little catchy name.
The data dump with Sammy? No, I'm just kidding.
Sammy. I can't. When you say Sammy, you know what I got to think, right? Okay.
Yeah. You're not going to sing, are you, Sammy? Anyway. I knew that was coming. I knew it.
Reds. All right. Also, Andrew DeCecco is back with the Daily DeCecco. He's been doing the pro day tour. He's been to now, I want to say his latest one was Maryland. I went to the Delaware one. He was not able to do it. And then he was at Rutgers as well. I think he's got one more on the docket. But a lot of people were there for the Maryland one. I think he wrote 31 NFL teams on the Daily DeCecco podcast. There were 2 really high-ranking officials from the Eagles there, Brandon Hunt and Phil Baya. Okay. So, and they've got some really good D-line talent and a couple other prospects who are probably going to get drafted there. So,
by the way, yep. Coach Loxley, I've met. I don't know him personally, but I met him. The head coach of Maryland. I forgot that he's known Jalen Hurts for a long time. He recruited him to Alabama, so he gave me some really good stuff and why he thought. I asked him before the game because I was interviewing him for Sports Grid, and this is that Thursday probably of Super Bowl week. He talked about the wiring, the toughness, the mental toughness. I don't know if he knew he was going to be the MVP of the game, but he just talked about everything because he knows everything about Hurts, everything he's been through professionally, personally, the challenges to taking his job and all that. He goes, kid's just mentally tough, man. And I go, yeah, he knows it. He was like an encyclopedia of Hurts because when you recruit a player, or you get to know him at the college level, you kind of know everything about their life and the family and the dad, being a high school coach. It's pretty cool, Coach Locke. But so yeah, Andrew was there, and by the way, so their basketball coach now is moved on to Villanova. How about that?
How about that? Yeah, he was not really discreet about that either.
Yeah, I heard it. What was that about?
His team in the middle of the tournament, being asked about his status at Maryland, and he was sort of trying to challenge the Maryland administration to do a better job. That's a big thing for all coaches of Division I now, whether it's basketball or football. Does my school have the support? Do they have the NIL program? Are they giving me the foundation? Even James Franklin has been doing that at Penn State for a while with his contract extensions, always saying, are the facilities going to be up to par? He's really pushed hard for Penn State to improve its facilities. So they did, and that's the world of college athletics now, is you really got to have the support of your administration to compete. And it sounded like Kevin Willard was basically saying in the middle of coaching Maryland in the tournament, and they made it to the Sweet 16, I think, right? He was basically like, I don't know. I don't know if I have the support or not. And then next thing you know, he's talking to Villanova and taking the job.
That's where that quote came for. Okay, so I saw the quote on social media. I'm like, what? I didn't have time to check it out.
Yeah.
Now you just fill in the blanks for me. It is crazy with NIL, by the way. Salary cap's coming. It's just crazy what's happening in college sports, man. And they were talking during some of the broadcast for the tournament about not a lot of upsets now because of the top schools get the money. They get the most NIL money. It's just that's the way it is.
That is. There were just enough upsets this year. You had Colorado State win a game, and Drake won a nice game, and then
early
State, right? Yeah, but I agree. I think going forward, you're not going to see the Loyola Chicago story from a couple of years ago.
Oh,
George Mason's. Yeah, I just don't think you're going to see that as much anymore because of that. But I'm okay with that. I think the best team should probably make it to the end anyway. It's always fun to find a Cinderella. I still think every once in a while there'll be a Cinderella that can make the 8 and maybe the Final 4. But I agree. I think it's going to be
Princeton.
Yeah.
When Princeton beat UCLA, remember when they upset in the tournament? And you mentioned Loyola of Chicago. I guess it was his sister. What is she, like 100 years old or something?
Very, very old.
Whatever
sister,
church.
I can't remember. Sister Louise. I forget what it was.
Unbelievable story. But that's why we love college athletics.
Yep.
It is what it is. It's big business. We get it.
Yeah, absolutely. And now listen, before I'm going to get on my high horse a little bit with this, because people keep saying it is ruining the game. It is ruining the sport. It is ruining. And then I just watched the college football playoffs, and I thought it was the most exciting thing that college football has done in about 20 years. And you know what? Those stadiums were filled, and people were talking about it, right? Those first round games, they were fun. And then this basketball tournament is still being highly visible. I think people like to say it's ruining sports because they're uncomfortable with the money but at the end of the day, people are watching these big games and they will continue to watch the big games. So I think it's a fun thing to say, but when it boils down to it, people are really still involved and probably as interested as ever, especially in college football. There's no doubt.
I would add this.
Yeah.
Well, in college football, see, here's the thing, and we'll also see this over a number of years in college football, in college basketball, and obviously there's the two big sports for colleges, is that the more you pay these kids, the less they're going to come out early.
Right.
Unless you're obviously
theoretically, we'll see that. Yeah.
Maybe more second or third round picks in the NFL. I don't know. I don't follow college baseball very closely, so I have no idea how that impacts it.
Right.
So some schools, like Wichita State, and some schools are really big on Arizona State, but look, if it keeps kids in school, third round pick who instead of maybe making in the rookie contract $4 million, if they're really good, maybe they stay next year. Whatever the case may be, if it helps kids stay in school, great.
Mm-hmm.
But the problem is the have and the have-nots. And I was talking to a college coach not too long ago who said, "Look, if you're in a mid-major, man, comparatively what's coming down the pike to the big schools, you just can't compete anymore. It's a tough deal, but it is what it is."
And yet somehow Northern Illinois beat Notre Dame in week 2 in Notre Dame, right? Go figure. No, but you're right, though. It is interesting. Now, somehow Toledo seems to be putting out NFL talent. So Quinyon Mitchell won, and their defensive tackle, Darius Alexander. We've talked about him a lot with both Sam and Greg Cosell. Patreon, we're going to be doing our Ask ITV on Wednesday night this week, correct?
Yes, at 8 Eastern. And by the way, at patreon.com/InsideTheBirds to sign up, become a member. You get the contract stuff before anyone gets it. We put up a bunch. So you can see as we've won along the last 3 weeks, and we'll keep doing that as we get them. And once we get the full breakdown of like Blaine Johnson's and I have actually Barkley's, I haven't gotten to it yet.
Right.
We'll do that later on. But you get that first, and then we got it. We're also going to go inside contracts for Patreon. We've got we'll announce that within the next 48 hours on Patreon first. Who we're getting on. We've got this. We're scheduling it right now for to go inside cash versus cap and really do a great examination of a guy who's done contracts, also played college football. So we'll do that, and we've got a lot going on there for Patreon. Patreon.com/InsideTheBirds.
All right, let's get inside these contracts on offense, Adam. We'll start with the playmakers, and the big one that came early, and I know it has excited So anytime the Eagles sign a player who had like some name value, they get a little bit more excited. So for one of their first signings was A.J. Dillon, the running back, former Packer, big guy, nicknamed Quadzilla, by the way, for the size of the squad. So when you put him next to Saquon Barkley, it's just too much. It's like the quad squad, right?
He was asked about it, by the way. He was asked in his press conference. I thought it was really good. He was awesome, by the way.
He was.
In his press conference. So, look, here's what happened with him. And I know he said there were a number of teams interested in him. He knew he had no chance to be a starting running back this year. There wasn't going anywhere to start. He's going there to compete for a role. The contract will tell you this. He didn't play last season. He had this the neck stinger issue. It got cleared up finally. So he signed a 1-year deal with the Eagles worth roughly $1.38 million. Of that money, just $167,500 was fully guaranteed at signing. It's simply because you couldn't guarantee hardly anything because he didn't play last season. The Eagles had leverage here. I think that story that you said you talked to Howie Roseman years ago, and I thought of you when I saw these numbers. This is, hey, you want to play for the Eagles? You can play for us, but this is what you're going to get.
Right.
You didn't play last season. It's not your fault, but we got a role for here to back up Saquon if you're healthy and you show your back. And that's the thing here. Will Shipley's a guy the Eagles were very high on, but he doesn't have the power and he hasn't shown the ability to handle volume. Dillon can handle volume. That's not a problem for him.
Right. ...
If he's healthy, if his legs are back, if his timing is back. He was sort of an up and down player with the Packers. You saw some really good, well before the injury, somewhere he just didn't do as well. We talked to someone who told us, look, he's a little bit better than you think catching the football. You don't really design stuff for him, but he knows what to do with it when he gets the ball in his hands outside of structure. But the bottom line is here, they signed him to be the backup, but he's got to earn that. Then, because here's the thing, if Barkley gets hurt, we know that there's still going to be a running team. You like Dillon to grind carries, but he's got to show it. And we're not really going to know. Like OTAs, you can see if you can run and cut. That's great. But when the pads go on, when he's really got to power through, that's really when we're going to know.
Wow. Can you repeat that number that he got guaranteed at signing? I think
$167,500. Yeah.
$167,500.
That's it. Yeah, because he didn't play last season. Yeah,
I mean, that is still that almost makes my eyes pop out the way it did when they signed Nick Morrow and gave him zero guaranteed dollar. At the end of the day, you're still an NFL player, and the point is, if he's hurt in camp, if he's not effective, if he looks like the second coming of Rashad Penny, all he cost the Eagles was $167,000.
Yeah,
again, that may not even count. Don't you only count the top 51 salaries?
Yes, until the season starts. Yeah, right. So the top 51 salaries count now once, and you remember on the 90-man roster, once we get to the regular season, everything counts. Practice squad, IR, everyone on your roster. So that's a great point you make. So yeah, this is an opportunity to win a Super Bowl. This is a great selling point to back up a phenomenal football player and great person in Barkley and to revive his career. Now, it's kind of like you're a caddy. You hear this in other sports where, like, when you're backing up a star, you don't really play very much. But as I mentioned, when they sign him, here's the thing, though. If they look based on last year, you'd love not to. If the Eagles are up with 10 minutes left by 24 points, you'd love to pull Barkley and let Dillon grind carries like that. No offense to Kenny Gainwell, was a great story of development. He's not Dillon. He's just not. If Dillon's healthy and he's got his legs back. But again, we're not really going to know. I've been fooled. I got to tell you, the reason why I'm talking like this, I've been fooled going to camp to OTAs, whether it's here, Baltimore, Giants, where a guy looks good in T-shirts and shorts. Well, you can't touch a running back in OTAs.
Right.
Dude, you can look good in OTAs.
No.
Like if you can cut.
I do look good.
No, you're in better shape now. I know you've been running. I know you're running.
I have. I probably still am about 10 times slower than a man who's 55 pounds. AJ Dillon, right?
Well, Dillon's around 245 generally. I have no idea what he weighs now. Yeah, that's a good point.
Hey, the thing is with health, and no, not to beat the dead horse, but he dealt last year with stingers, and if there's a lesson that we learn from Jordan Howard is that those can recur very quickly and very easily. So you hope that they're behind him. I'm sure he hopes, the Eagles hope, and hopefully we're not discussing this in August, September, October, or beyond for him.
Yeah, exactly. Because man, and Jordan Howard's, not only did they last, they lasted longer than they normally do.
Yeah.
And then they came back later in his career. I don't know. I don't have it in front of me, but
Yeah.
I know it happened again, and he really never played again. And yeah, that's some serious stuff. I wish we knew Jordan Howard to get him on just to talk about that, because I've talked to a number of players over the years, because generally it goes away. You get it massaged out,
Hmm.
or sometimes you don't need it, just goes away. But the problem is it goes numb, and
Right.
that's scary, man. That's scary when it doesn't come back immediately. Wow.
100%. All right, let's move on to the other playmakers, the pass catchers, Kylan Granson, and you mentioned the aforementioned Nick Muse, who we had completely forgot about until this episode of the pod. So Kylan Granson is interesting, Adam. Wasn't he a 4th-round pick of the Colts?
He was. He's another one of those flex move tight ends where he's under 6'2". He can run, no question about it. It just didn't really work. It just
Right.
didn't really work with the Colts. Now, you could blame it on the quarterback problems they had if you want, but the Eagles obviously liked him. He's definitely athletic, pretty good character kid from what I understand.
Hmm.
It just didn't work, barely used. But here, now, depending on what happens with Goddard, but if Goddard's gone, he'll give them ability to do something different. And look, you've got Kevin Patullo is a different play caller. Who knows now how he'll use him? I mean, again, he's not an inline tight end. He's way too small. And I talked to someone who actually graded for that draft out of SMU, by the way,
Hmm.
5 years ago. So he's an interesting player. Now he got it's the Eagles have probably set the record for most deals under $2 million. Crazy that, because what was the number we came up with? What was it? Was it right?
That was the
What was it?
guarantee that everybody was getting 3 years ago. 600,000.
Yeah, it was either 600 grand or 625 or something.
Yeah.
I don't know where they came up with this, but it's just weird. But almost every free agent other than Ojulari, will do him on the next show. Got under 2 million, but so he gets 1.75 million. That's the total contract in cash. The full guaranteed signing is 1 million. It's made up of a partial. It's of the signing bonus, and they fully guaranteed 500 grand of the base salary of 1.5 million. Look, he's another one that based on the money, he's not guaranteed to make it. That's nothing, to be honest with you.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm going to trust that, because I know the way this works. Howie may have said something to Nick Sirianni. Hey, listen, we like this kid. We liked him out of that draft. How will you use him? Because this is the way the discussions go. And they have an idea. Obviously, Kevin Patullo, who's the play caller now, has got to get involved, and they'll have a plan for him. You don't sign a guy without a plan. I'm curious how they're going to use him. And again, you could forget if Goddard's here this season. We know how much they've tried to move him. If he's here this season, remember Granson's on a 1-year deal. You just don't see him getting on the field with Goddard's here. Wow.
Yeah. You make an interesting point about the team scouting him, liking him before. I do know that the Eagles also had a 4 on him coming out of SM.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah,
okay.
They did have a 4 on him. So that's not a nothing pick. I mean, that shows you they have. I mean, a 4th round is Keely Ringo. It's Jack Driscoll, right? It's Will Shipley. It's trying to think of some other guys in the 4th round that have stuck with this team. I mean, that's a 4th round pick is not. It's not like a dart throw like a 6 or a 7.
No.
So, yeah.
A fourth rounder is a high end backup. That's when we got this. We have to do this. We'll actually do this again. Well, because I know Greg Cosell doesn't look at it the way we do. I've asked scouting directors over the years, how do you define this round? Like, first round, no question starter, must be a highly productive starter. Second round pick is a good starter, not elite, not. There's something that prevents him from going the first round. Third round, middle of the road starter. 4th round pick, low starter, high end backup. So Granson, maybe, boy, if they could figure this out with him, there's something there clearly.
Yeah, Jason Avant, our friend, the king of the 4th round picks, a very, very good 4th
productive.
round
Slot. Yeah,
sure. How would his contract? You said of the 1.7 million, or right? One fully guaranteed is 1 million, right?
Correct. It's on it. Yes.
Oh, so they guaranteed more than 50% of his contract.
I know, but it's only 1 million. I get you're right, but it's only 1 million.
It doesn't mean anything. I agree with you.
That's not going to keep him. If we've learned anything in this business, 8 years doing this is our 8th year or 8th season, whatever you want to call it. The fully guaranteed money at signing will give you the story. That tells you pretty much everything. Yes, it's over 50% of the contract. You're absolutely right, but 1 million, they'll walk away from 1 million. Like that's what he's got. He's got to earn the roster spot. And boy, this tight end position is fascinating for the Eagles. You got the Goddard situation, which is fluid right now. And then even if Goddard's back, they're not going to extend his contract. So you have to ask yourself this question, because remember, the draft is about the future. What's it gonna like if they draft somebody this year? It's year one. The guy's got to earn his role, even if he's a first round. It doesn't have to be in the first round, by the way. It could be the second round or third round. But then you've got Harrison Bryant. I don't have his contract yet. I'll have that within a couple of days.
Okay.
But the bottom line is, they could have a very interesting group here. Now, here's another thing before we move on. They were super heavy 12 personnel last season. I think they led the NFL last season 12. I know they were until very late in the season at the very least. But and Kellen Moore was never his deal. His thing was 11 personnel and some 10. But because of Barkley's success and having two tight ends on the field help them for blocking purposes. So there's a lot going on here as we move on here at tight end. There's a lot of moving parts here with the tight end position with this football team, more than usual.
Yeah, it would be funny if they had a situation again, like let's say they draft a tight end who's very good and plays a lot, where you may have like a Harrison Bryant or a Kylan Granson being like this year's version of what Boston Scott was a couple of years ago, which was the highest paid player at his position, but yet the least used player at the position.
2 million. No, it's funny. I remember that one, and you and I remember like, this can't be right. And I checked. I was told it absolutely is right. He got 2 million. He was the highest paid running back on the team. I'm like, how's a guy that doesn't play, as you just said? It's ridiculous. I know it's only 2 million, but that's not the point. You have to, because the Eagles, he unless he played the Giants, he really didn't do anything.
Right.
So they kick off return a little bit, but no, it's just, I know Harrison Bryant. I know for a fact he made well less than 2 million. I just don't have the full breakdown. I don't have it yet. So we'll talk about it on the next show. We'll add that to the defensive contracts. We have all those, and then before we move on here to the offensive lineman, that's and Charlie Hewlett, by the way, got paid.
Oh yeah, I talk about Charlie.
Yep. Nick Muse, who was a former 7th rounder, right? I believe of the Vikings.
Yes, the Vikings out of William and Mary via South Carolina.
Correct, right. 2022 draft. Okay, so it was a 7th rounder. He's only getting 1.15 million, but they did give him a signing bonus of only 25K. But here's another one for you: they gave him a first game roster bonus, so he gets 25 grand if he not only is on the team, but he's active for the game. He's not. He can't be inactive if he's on the roster. But they clearly liked him. There's some. I need to learn more about him. Is he a good blocker? Greg probably doesn't. I don't know if Greg Cosell's on his team because he's the 7th rounder. You never know. Sometimes Greg sees guys most people don't know about. But let's check into his background of whether he could be a wide tight and whether he can block. I'm very curious.
Well, I hope so. At 250 pounds.
It's true. You never know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Plus, he played for the Vikings. They've been, whether it was under Zimmer or even O'Connell, they like their tight ends to be able to block a little bit. So I would imagine, but we'll see. Yeah.
That was interesting.
I feel like we're going to say this for years to come. Insert name here, Nick Muse in this situation, got more guaranteed money upon signing than Nick Morrow did. And Nick Morrow wound up starting for the Eagles, having a 3 interception game for the Eagles, coming back last year for the Eagles.
So funny. So for people who weren't with us, we got the contracts. We put it on our show first. It wasn't anywhere. You couldn't find it anywhere. We got it. And I don't think I put in I send Geoff a rundown. He adds whatever he wants to add. And I don't know that I put it in there, but you seem like you didn't believe. There's no way,
liar, man. I was like, you
were like ready to faint. You're like, what? I'm not seeing some dumbfounded. You're like, what the hell?
Well, I kept saying, why would he sign on the first day of free agency for no guaranteed money? Can't he at least hold out for? I mean,
I think I remember we had Paul Gunther, his former defense coordinator for the Raiders. He said, look, they brought him in. He was was he a safety at wherever small school in Chicago or something?
Yep.
And he's really smart, and he's a willing learner. He's a really good kid, really good dude. I can't call him a kid anymore. I always call anyone who's younger than like 30 a kid. But anyway, So he goes, look, he was a willing learner and this, that, and the other, but he's so small. He's in mid 220s, and the lack of size would show up. And he kept, he bounced around a little bit. And on your point, they signed him early, and he got no guaranteed money. And then he went up being on off the Eagles roster a little bit. He came back last year, as a matter of fact.
Yeah, I just we get so used to free agency signings, even April, late May, no matter what. And Nick Muse is a great example. You almost always see a little bit of a signing bonus. Like a guy like Nick Muse, he's not played that much, but he's getting a little bit of a signing bonus. Nick Morrow had started 17 games for the Bears the year before, and the year before that, 11 for the Raiders. It didn't seem like the type of guy who would sign for absolutely $0 on the contract on the first day of free agency. It was sort of mind-boggling. That one just jumped out to me. I'm like, I've seen maybe this before for a guy who's like a project or out of the league for a couple of years or never really played much, but the guy had been a starter for the last 2 years.
And he had a ton of tackles, but it shows you 8 tackles are a meaningless stat. It doesn't really tells you nothing. It's what the tape looks like, and the tape clearly wasn't good enough. And this is when the Eagles were just going so cheap a line. Was this 2023?
That was 2 years ago. Yeah, 2023, coming right off the Super Bowl loss.
Yeah, and then he didn't make the roster originally, right? Didn't he?
Correct. He did not.
Right, and then they brought him back. Yeah, they brought him back. So anyway, contracts always tell you a story, man. They always you can look into it, you can infer, you can understand. They always explain something, but by the guarantee it's signing. And it is also funny. Not on these deals. I don't think Dillon got voidable years. I'll double check. I don't think he did, but Adoree Jackson got 4. We'll go over this on the next show, but he got 4 voidable years on a contract.
Of course he did.
Well, I don't. And in fact, I think Boston Scott did on the $2 million.
I think he did. I think you're right.
Man, you're really trying to save cap space when you do it. It is really funny. A lot of teams. In fact, every so often, if I have time, I'll look at about a 50 to 75 contracts around the league to see how they structure. Very few teams do it like this.
Yeah, at some point we got to start to do a little bit of a like who has had the most total collective voidable years, because Lane Johnson's probably getting pretty close with all the restructures he's had, because he's had voidable years from past restructures that he's now had to redo because he's still playing. So BG had voidable years. Didn't Jason Kelce have a couple of voidables on?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. You know how it used to be like Eli Manning has made the most guaranteed money in the NFL for at one point, and then it was Kirk Cousins. We want to know who has had the most voidable years on a contract. It has to be somebody with the Eagles.
Oh yeah. You know what's interesting? The Bucks. Mark Dominic and I were talking about this. In fact, when you and I saw him at the Senior Bowl.
Yeah.
And I don't know where Mark learned this, but when he came to the Bucks, when he got I think he worked for the Chiefs before that. But anyway, when he got the job with the Bucks, and again, I don't know who he learned this from, but he said, we're not doing signing bonuses. We're going to do cash and cap equal. So basically, no signing bonus. This way, there's no proration.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't want to do that. He's like, because if it doesn't work out, you don't want to be zapped with dead money. And Mike Greenberg, the other Greenie, who interviewed for the Jets GM job, Greenie does the same thing. He was for a number of years, and he changed it when Brady got there because they were trying to load the roster up.
Uh-huh.
Funny, I was like, wow, what is this about? They never do this.
Right.
I'm like, this is very Eagles-like. Uh-oh.
Yeah, no doubt about it. All right, Adam, before we get into some of the other guys' contracts on offense, changes going on at stretch zone, really good beneficial changes at stretch zone. Tell our audience about it.
Yeah, this is really cool. And we mentioned this before, and I actually took advantage of it. So I was visiting my mom, who just turned 95, in Boynton Beach, Florida, and they have 2 locations in Boynton Beach. And I visited, I think it's Boynton Beach West, and it was great. And it's part of they now have system-wide access. So that means if you've got credits left on your membership, you could use them anywhere in the country. That because most are franchisees, so they've worked it out with their franchisees. It's great. And I wanted to do this before I flew Friday because flying, man, you never know what you got to deal with. And It's hard. You never know how long you'll be in the airport, as everybody knows who flies. So I used it. It was great. My legs are great. I got my quads done and my hamstrings done. That's by the way, that's what I do when I fly. I always get my legs done, my quads and hamstrings and calves, as you know, because you get stretched. Calves are everyone pretty much gets your calves done, but I made sure my quads were stretched. It's basically your thighs.
Yep.
Because man, sitting sometimes in planes, you feel like a pretzel. And once you know it, I felt like one. So, but I felt great on there, and because you're crunched up a little bit on the plane. But I'm so glad I did that, and I also have my traps done because I played tennis on Sunday. So take advantage of that and sign up for your free 30-minute stretch at stretchzone.com. You can go to your nearest location, and then you could also sign up by going there. And by the way, when you do it, what happens is you have sort of appraisal of what's you've had any surgeries, what's bothering you, or is there anything we need to know before you get stretched. And you get stretched right after your appraisal. It takes like 20 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
You get it done right there and then, and that doesn't cost you anything. You get the free 30-minute stretch done, and in fact, they'll ask you what you do athletically, if you do anything, or you're just walking or trying to get back in athletics or whatever, as you know, being a runner. And they'll make suggestions based on what kind of activities you're going to have, which is very important because I didn't know that. When I went in December 21, I didn't know anything about stretching. I'm like, okay, what do I do? Like, what? I play tennis. What should I do? And they went over like 5 or 6 things, which I still do with them and on my own.
Right. And by the way, another great that you mentioned there, benefit of that system-wide act is you can walk in to a stretch zone in Florida where you've never gone before, and they have your information on file. So your practitioner will know exactly what you've done, what you need to do, what you work on. And so someone who's not normally working with you now has all the information that they need. That's
great point. Yeah, that's true. In fact, I saw the woman typing after, as I was walking out, she was typing what they did. Yeah. In fact, it's a great point because they need to know. You may not see the same person. Everybody has their favorites. You learn there might be 2 or 3 people. Like, let's say there's usually up to 5 practitioners, stretchers, as I call them, at each location.
Mm-hmm.
You go through, you go through whoever, you try someone, if you like them, great. If you don't, you try somebody else. But typically they're all really good. So I've never had a problem with anyone. They're great. And they take such good care of you. They know, they get to know your body a little bit. They get to know your tightness. And I'm known for having super tight hamstrings. It's just the way it is. And I do the pregnancy yell.
Yeah, take a number, brother.
Right. Yes, oh God, yeah. I know you told me when you first went there. So anyway, let's move on here. But we love our friends at StretchZone. StretchZone.com. Get your free 30-minute stretch.
All right. So the Eagles acquired via trade an offensive lineman who was once a first-round pick just 4 years ago. 3 years ago? 4 years ago, right? Kenyon Green out of A&M. He was considered the top guard the year the Texans drafted him. Hasn't worked out for him. He's had injuries. The Eagles have brought him in via trade that sent C.J. Gardner-Johnson to the Texans. By the way, that Texans defense, I don't want to get off track here, but it has the potential to be really, really good next year. I think C.J. is going to fit in really well. If they can get their offense straightened out, they'll be even better. But defensively, D'Amico's got a really nice crew going on there. But the Eagles, they turn their attention to Kenyon Green here, and Adam, the contract for him looks like what? Because we know that because he's a first rounder, there is a 5th-year option available, but the Eagles would have to pick that up.
Yeah, and they're not going to pick that up, obviously. He may not even make the team. I mean, he should. So, by the way, he was the 15th pick overall in the 22 draft. So here are the offensive linemen that went before him, and boy, it's not been very good. Ike Ekwonu, the left tackle for the Panthers, we've told he's been more down than up.
Yep.
Evan Neal, to say the least, he went 7th, 1 pick after Ike Ekwonu. He's been very disappointing, to say the least. Charles Cross has just been okay.
Yeah.
For the Seahawks, he went 9th overall. Then the next one was the first really true guard, Kenyon Green, at 15, and he's been traded. As a matter of fact, if you look at that first round, Zion Johnson from Boston College went 17th for the Chargers. He starts. He's been okay.
Yeah.
Trevor Penning went 19. He got benched.
Oh, my God, this is a horror story for
wow
offensive line.
Now he's starting at right tackle, but now Tyler Lindenbaum's really good. He's worked out.
Yep.
He went.
Not surprisingly, the Ravens got the good one.
The 25th. Eric DeCosta doing a good job. 25th overall to the Ravens, and then who's the center? Cole Strange, unfortunately. Now that was a strange pick. That was shocking. In fact, people close to him didn't think he'd go that high.
I
And
don't think people close to him thought he was going to go in the second round, let alone the
I had third round grades I got from other teams because I was
Yeah,
stunned when he went in the first round. He went 29th overall as a guard. He had major knee surgery last year, unfortunately.
right.
So you're right, man. And by the way, the last pick we should mention this. I should have mentioned this. Do you know who the last pick of that round is? He's now an Eagle.
The last pick of the first round, and this was give me the year again.
22. Don't look it up.
I'm not. It wasn't Uche, was it?
No, I'm going to give you a hint. Georgia.
Was it Ojulari?
Lewis Seen.
Oh, Scene. Right. Scene.
Yeah.
Gosh, when you give somebody a hint and you tell them Georgia and you're talking about the Eagles, it's really not that big of a hint. You
Yeah, I
think it's
know.
a huge hint,
Sorry.
but it's not. It's like still 40% of the roster.
Right. If I would have said Alabama, it would have been a little bit easier, maybe.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
wow, I'm looking at this. Wow. Okay, Cam Jurgens also at 51 overall. That looks like a hit.
Yeah.
Luka Decky's he's changed positions, but he's okay.
Yeah,
Yeah,
he's
nice
he's
play.
functional. Yeah.
It is really Josh Azudu. He unfortunately had an ACL. He's been disappointing. Abe Lucas, I know, has been more down than up. The
Yeah.
Seahawks. Bernard Ryman has been more. He's an older player, been okay. He's now that's called left tackle. Wow, this has been an awful offensive line draft. Sean
Yeah.
Ryan, who's battling to be a starting guard.
Whew.
Holy smokes! Bad draft.
Yeah.
Anyway.
All right. So Green, what's his
Oh yeah.
contract for this year?
All right. So he's on the 4th year of his rookie deal, and his base salary of $2.880 million is fully guaranteed. Now I've got to be honest with you. It's less than $3 million. It would take something catastrophic from not to make the team. Because he's going to compete for the starting right guard job.
Right.
They're not handing the job to Tyler Sheet. He's got to win it.
Right.
And Kenon Green, I get it. Greg said, what did Greg say on that show with us? Was it the pass block and the run blocking was bad?
Pass blocking.
Okay. Well, that's something good.
Yeah, pass pro. Pretty good. Yeah.
Okay. So, he said his run blocking was good?
Yeah.
Okay. We'll see what Stout thinks. But, yeah, he's going to be, you're basically essentially $2.9 million running it off.
Mm-hmm.
That's not starter money. He's got to prove himself. So we'll see what happens with him. I'm sort of like, okay, I get it. They liked him for that draft. They brought him in for a pre-draft visit. Get it. But he's got to perform. Let's see what happens.
The only thing that I could see maybe throwing I agree with you. I think he's very, very likely to make the team. But if the Eagles draft a guard really high, with 32nd pick or in the second round, and then you got that guy and Steen and Green and Keegan, of course, are going to try to see if he can play that position at all. But if the draft pick was and Steen were really, really good and you felt pretty stocked at 1-2 and you didn't want to pay that money for a number 3 right guard, or like you have to pay it, but at least not all the whole, you'll just pay the guaranteed part, right? The 2.88, and then you don't think he's going to be on your team going forward, then I could see a situation where maybe they would move on. But that's, we have to cross that bridge when we get there.
Yeah, exactly. So that'll be a battle in camp. Again, we'll see what they do in the draft on the offensive line. Theoretically, if they do anything, it would be a tackle, who you hope would have versatility to play also guard. Man, the Eagles are the kings of the changing positions. They've done this with Stoutland, going back to our friend Todd Hermans. Todd told us that story many years ago when he was told to put on weight, then take off weight. It's just funny how that works out. But yeah, so that would be that. And then one more. Do you want to do Charlie Hewlett? Who got by the way?
What about Kendall Lamb? Do you have his?
Yeah, my bad. Kendall Lamb. Mm-hmm. Kendall Lamb got 1 year at $1.5 million. They fully guaranteed half of it, signing $750, which is honestly, it's not enough for him to make the team. Now they've signed him to be the swing tackle. Again, he's, as we were told, he's way better at right tackle than left. He can play left. He's started both positions. They're counting on him as of now to be the swing tackle, but it also depends on what they do in the draft. We'll see what happens. See if they draft a tackle, when that guy would be ready. But again, he's been with a number of teams. They know the player. He's in the twilight of his career here. Injuries are really not a problem with him. It's just he's a backup, but a guy that's been in the league a long time, well into his 30s now, and the player they know about. So again, it's only $1.5 million, so he's got to show that he's ready to go.
Tell you what, if he makes a team and plays decently and has to play a couple games or get in there and hold it down for a little bit, that contract's a bargain.
Sure. Well,
Because
look,
offensive lineman who can step in and
yeah.
you know, like Fred Johnson, right? Or I mean, Mekhi Becton's the extreme example. He's not going to Kendall Lamb's not going to start, but if he had to for a couple of games and he played well, it's a bargain.
I don't know for a fact that the Eagles didn't offer Becton money, but just what he got, I know it was reported for 1 year, $20 million. It's really a 1 year, $7 million deal based on structure.
Mm-hmm.
The fully guaranteed money is under $7 million. But the fact that the way the Eagles approach these contracts, again, it would not surprise me if they didn't even offer him any money, which obviously would be surprising based on how big of a surprise he was.
Yeah.
But they clearly did not want to invest much money in free agency this year. We put this out on that show that Monday,
Mm-hmm.
but I didn't think it'd be this cheap. Holy smokes! I'm even surprised. I didn't think it would be this cheap.
You and I were pretty lockstep with that. Once we got the intel on how this offseason was going to look, I think a lot of fans felt 2 of the 4, and they were thought Bond and Becton would be the likeliest, where Sweat and Williams were going to outplay themselves. But you and I were kind of trying to tell people, don't get so. Becton is going to be a tough value for everybody, so it may not be a lot of money. And as you just said, it wasn't, but we still felt that the Eagles were not probably going to play that ball game with him in the end, and they didn't.
Good for Mekhi though.
Great for him. Absolutely.
Yeah, if he plays every game this season, he will make $10 million.
Mm-hmm.
But he certainly won't be back with the Chargers in the second year if he doesn't stay healthy. But
right.
It's interesting, the Eagles' approach. It was just, you win a Super Bowl, you wouldn't think they would do this, but sometimes it's out of your hands as a general manager. It's about what you're told that your cash spend, what your limit's going to be this year. So whatever the reason is. So, and then Charlie Hewlett,
the long snapper,
who got it. What's that?
The long snapper, just in case people don't know who Charlie Hewitt is.
Charlie Hewlett will be the Eagles' new long snapper, who turns 35 soon, by the way. Long time Browns long snapper, bounced around a little bit with the league, but he replaces Rick Lovato. His guarantee so he gets $1.422 million, 500, and the full guarantee at signing is $467,500. So the guarantee is bigger than AJ Dillon. Well, AJ Dillon didn't play last season. For people who are like, how could he get a bigger guarantee? Well, AJ Dillon didn't play last season.
Right.
So you can't guarantee him $100 million. You just can't. So, but Charlie Hewlett got it. Yeah, the guy's a tenured. I wonder why the Browns cut him, but that's you have to ask yourself that.
Yeah.
But Eagles wanted him.
Now, how about this? Rick Lovato, who was once an All-Pro, I think just a couple of years ago. He is, to my knowledge, still unemployed, correct? Unsigned?
Correct. Yep. He is unemployed. And Charlie Hewlett started his career with Dallas. He went to New England, Jacksonville, back to the Patriots, to the Browns, then back to the Patriots, and the Browns for a number of years. And he's got a chance to win a ring. It's kind of cool.
That is, yeah. And by the way, Rick Lovato, one of just 4 human beings on the face of this planet who can say that they have 2 Super Bowl rings with the Eagles. How about that?
That is interesting. Yeah, I've heard that stat before. That is interesting.
Yeah, for me, I always like to tout that one. It's him.
There you go. That's where you got
Elliott, BG, and Lane Johnson. All right,
Very
great
nice
stuff. So that is the contract situation. Love going into it. We'll do defense on the next one, and then, of course, all week long, Cosell, Sam Finkel, Andrew DeCecco, just giving you as much content leading up to this NFL draft as we can. That's going to do it for this edition of Inside the Birds, the leading podcast in Eagles Intel. And as always, we thank you for flying with us inside the Birds. Be sure to check out our friends at PHLSportsNation.com. They're enhancing the fans' experience with their coverage of all Philadelphia sports teams. For the fan, by the fan is their motto. So make sure you check them out at PHLSportsNation.com and on Twitter at PHLSportsNation.